What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353. Hey everybody, so excited about today's show. We just finished wrapping up about an hour and a half discussion, and today's guest, he is one of the most sought after sports psychologists in the professional golf world today and around the country. Not only does he have a stable full of touring professionals, but he also works with the University of Alabama in their sports performance department. And it's no wonder, after you listen to today's show, how and why Alabama sports teams have become so successful when you got a guy like him behind you and helping out in every aspect that he can. We had a great discussion. The first time I heard him speak, I was so impressed by his energy, his enthusiasm, and his knowledge about what he talked about, that I said, that is somebody that I have got to get on the Golf 360 podcast. So he was kind enough to come on with his schedule. I'm very, very flattered that he carved out an hour and a half to let me talk to him. I'm sure you're going to pick up a bunch of great things. A lot of these things are simple and that we kind of lose focus on in today's highly technical, highly driven world where we're always looking for that next thing that's going to take us to the next level, where he sheds some light on sometimes it's really just the simple things and doing those consistently and consistently well. He's a great guy. You're going to love listening to him, and I'm sure everybody's going to pick up something that they can use to improve in their golf game and their life. So please sit back and relax and enjoy and just grow from all the things that he has to say, and give a big Golf 360 welcome to my guest today, Dr. Bhrett McCabe. All right, Dr. Bhrett McCabe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Very excited to have you on. A lot of friends and colleagues and everybody ask me, say, well, who do you have coming on next and who you working on and trying to schedule? And some of them know golf, some they don't. And I told them, I said, look, I got a great guy, Dr. Bhrett McCabe, coming on. And they say, well, I kind of explain who you are. And they say, well, why him? And I said, well, he and I have a lot in common. We're both 6'5", we're both follically challenged, and we're both devilishly good looking. So
Exactly.
you're a perfect fit.
You got it.
But
yeah, that's definitely true.
The real reason was before I didn't even know who you were, and you were at Coach Camp, Andrew Rice's Coach Camp, which for anybody out there listening, any of the coaches, that's definitely one you want to get to. Andrew and his wife Terry do a great job. But here you are. It's the very first day. It's like 8:00 in the morning. Everybody's kind of getting the cobwebs out of their head, drinking their coffee, and you come on stage, the very first presenter, and you're so energetic and passionate about what you're doing. And I didn't even know who you were, and I said, I got to get that guy to come on the show. And then, of course, as I listened to you talk, it was clearly evident you were extremely good at what you did. But very, very happy to have you on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the compliment. I think people always ask, where do you want to speak in the lineup? And I don't really care. I'll speak anywhere, but usually I get put first in the day. Second day of a conference is usually a wheelhouse spot for mine, because people have, been hanging out in the bar after a long day in the conference and talking, and they need a little shot of energy. And so, my goal is I want people to be passionate about what they do in coaching or leading. And, people are catalysts for other people. All right. And I want to be a catalyst for people who are there in the audience and share with them some insight and some wisdom of working with players or coaches or leaders. But I also want them to realize that they're catalysts for the people in their lives. And so if they can get one or two pieces of information, I'm going to build it in science, but I'm going to make science conversational. I'm going to make it so that people understand what they're trying to get out of it is beneficial to them in the long run. And then, at the end of the day, it's all about how we share that information. We go back to our individual tribes and our individual communities and things like that. So
now you have your website is themindside.com, and you have your podcast Secrets to Winning, and I highly recommend anybody listening to check those out. Now, you're also the University of Alabama Sports and Performance Psychologist. So
yep.
Do you have a separate practice, or are you employed by the university?
So the university, I'm only there one day a week. I was brought into the university, 7 years ago. At the time, the men's basketball program was making a push for the NCAA postseason, and Alabama historically, back in the 80s, early 90s, was a basketball school, but it had been on hard times, and they had a coach there, Anthony Grant, who's now the head coach at University of Dayton, who's got their team in the top 5. I mean, he's a phenomenal coach. He had I got an email one day from their athletic trainer and said, hey, look, we've got some issues. We're looking for somebody. Would you be interested? And I was like, of course, I'm happy to help. And I don't reach out to coaches, universities, and stuff like that. I feel like people want, if I do good work, my word will get out, and people who need to see me will see me. And so I went over there and started helping out the basketball team. And then the athletic department called and said, look, we already have football set up. We don't need any help in the football realm. But can you help out the non-revenue sports? Can you be our resource to help them out? I was like, yeah, absolutely, not a problem. And very fortunate at the University of Alabama, there's a couple individuals there that are groundbreakers. Jeff Allen, who's the director of sports medicine, and then Ginger Childress is the head of behavioral medicine and athletics in the country. I mean, there's nobody better than her. And so they brought me in. So I work over there one day a week, and I work with all sports. I work with football now too, quite often. And so I have my practice there. But we like to be at Alabama. We tend to like to be consultants from a standpoint of, instead of being full time, because if you're full time, you only have one vision. You only have one perspective. By doing it the way we do it, at least with me in the performance realm, I can go over there and bring my experiences working with the PGA Tour, Major League Baseball players, with my college athletes. And it's something I learned from Dr. James Andrews, who's the orthopedic surgeon, the world-renowned one, is, expose yourself to a lot of different areas and bring the expertise across each person. An NFL player needs to know what it's like to be a little old lady who's having a knee replacement, and that, little old lady who's having a knee replacement wants to know what it's like to have an NFL person who's having ACL reconstruction. So we try to blend those and merge those experiences on a regular basis, and I think it works over there.
Yeah, that's one thing that you talk about quite a bit that I've read and I've heard you speak on is utilizing coaches and or professionals, if you have access to them, within your industry or your university or wherever you are. And I agree with you 100% wholeheartedly. And that my opinion is that they have, not only are they experts in their field, but they have a completely different perspective and can solve problems. And I don't mean solving problems in a bad way, but as you mentioned, showing an athlete that what it's like to be a little lady who's going through the same thing, and then vice versa. And I think what you're doing is very, very good, and can benefit regardless of what industry you're in. I mean, it's a golf podcast and we talk about golf and life, but anything that anybody's in. Did you learn that in your educational experience, or is it just life that kind of taught you that?
I think it's kind of more life for me. I mean, I think when we're in a situation, I'm fascinated by people. And, when I started out and wanting to do something different even in my academic career, it started out by just reaching out to people and meeting them. I think we get so siloed and we get so limited in where we are that I think the simple act of reaching out to somebody you don't know and saying, hey, I'd love to take you for coffee and sit down and pick your mind. I very rarely ever had somebody who's denied that. People like to share. They like to communicate. We like to collaborate. And, I think even in the academic setting, I mean, that's an easy answer because there are people that are there available to us on our campus, right? They're right there. They're a part of that. And you've got people on a college campus who are experts in finance. They're experts in mechanical engineering. They're experts in, anthropology. And there's experts. And a lot of times there's a wall up between academics and athletics. And it's not an appropriate wall because we're all fighting for the same thing. They're developing students. So are the coaches. Coaches want to win, but they also want to develop great men and women for the future. Well, academics want to educate, and they're trying to develop great people for the future too. So I think, it's a great skill. Listen, in your own community, whatever you do, most of the time we may know the people who work at our business park, but we sure as hell don't know the other people who are, in our zip code. And I think we have to be willing to say once a month or twice a month, I'm going to find somebody to take to breakfast or take to lunch. I mean, listen, even if we're financially strapped, a $10 or $15 Starbucks experience, you're going to spend that somewhere anyways. Mm-hmm. So you might as well spend that on learning from somebody and saying, look, I just want to pick your mind. And then when you leave that appointment, you ask the person, hey, is there anybody else you think I could benefit from? I would love to sit down and communicate with, I like to learn. And if we're learning, we're winning because we're growing our expertise. And I think we all can do that. I mean, golf coaches, one of the biggest knocks I have in the golf industry, working across multiple different industries, is why are we afraid to bring in coaches from other sports to teach us? Now sometimes it has to do with seasons. It's hard to bring a baseball coach in during golf season, right? But it's not hard to bring a football coach in. And, we say, well, football's different. Is it? They're teaching people a skill and getting them to execute it under pressure. What's different between that and golf? Nothing.
Okay? Is it a failure to see the common denominators of development of a person, or as you just said, teaching?
I think it's a failure of that, but it's also a time thing. We get so focused on what's right in front of us that we can't see the bigger picture. And as a result, we fail ourselves. Now, what do? We go to a conference. I love going to sales conferences and entrepreneurial conferences because I find the energy very, very contagious, but I also find it very similar to athletics and coaching. And so, you go there and you got all these people who are begging for information. They want to get better, right? Well, if you look at most people's podcasts, just as an example, they are very based around what they're naturally listening to and what they do on their business. If you listen to a salesperson, most of their sales podcasts are going to be about sales because we've got this fear that if I can't master my immediate domain, then I can't succeed in everything else I'm doing. And it's quite the opposite. If you look at my bookshelf, I have very few sports psychology books. In fact, I don't like them. I'm not a big fan of sports psychology books. I'd rather read biographies and business books because the same principles apply. I don't need to listen to 14 other ways to follow the process. I've been there. I've done that with 2 coaches. I've done that with a coach that won 5 national titles as I played with, and I work with a coach that's won 6. And they're very process oriented. I understand it, but I want to know what it's like to be in the military. My dad was, retired Air Force, and fascinated by the military mindset. I want to know what it's like to be entrepreneurs. And, you know, I consider myself an entrepreneur. I want every golf coach to see themselves as that. And I want people to, you know, what is it like to be in that? I think one of my favorite books I've ever read is a book called Presidential Courage, about the courage moments that great presidential decision making has to come down to. So I think the more we can learn outside of our context, the more we have generalizability of our material, the more we can utilize it. Sitting down and talking to a business owner that has to inspire their team, right? To reach out to a salesperson who's struggling. What difference is that than the player I just got off the phone with right before you called who's struggling in his game? There's no difference. Right? We want to make it so specific and context specific. But the reality is human beings are human beings. And we all struggle with things, and we all are challenged by things. And so we have to be willing to see the bigger picture and realize how human beings are consistent across one another.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, when I was starting this podcast and I came up with the name Golf 360, and friends would say, okay, well, what is it? And I said, well, it's all encompassing, anything that has to do with the game of golf. And the knock was, well, it's too broad, it's too big, no one's ever going to listen. And I'm like, yeah, but you've got to utilize people from other industries and other experiences to shed light on.
But here's the bigger issue about your podcast. Okay, is it's not really about what people are listening or not. It's what you're listening to.
Right, and similar to you, like I obviously have some instructional books going back to the
sure.
Nelson Hogan era and all the way through and so on. But I look to the other side of my bookshelf, and I've got books like The Opposable Mind, Man's Search for Meaning. You know, stuff that really gets into the human aspect of whatever it is that someone's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think you have to develop that, and you obviously can speak better to that than I can. That's your expertise.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is, look, we want to constantly be learning. You know, I love going to a Starbucks and seeing our maturest population in there reading books on something new. I mean, when our mind stops learning, we're in a really dangerous place. I think we get to a spot today where our society in general is very black or white. It's all or nothing. Like it's either A or it's B. There's no in between. And yet we live our entire life. Okay. We live our entire experience in the gray areas. We live our entire world in the ambiguity of life. And yet when we stop learning, when we stop experiencing, when we get to that stuff, we become so focused on putting everything into a box, and yet we function so great when we're in those ambiguities, and we function so fantastically when we're in the unknown, that the more that we can gain wisdom, the better we can be to manage the yays and the nos and the alls and the nothings, and realize that there's a little bit of a fine line between everything, and it's how we navigate that's really defines our experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you work with the golf team as well?
Yeah.
Now, they obviously have a fabulous team. And so one question I had was, how do you take something like the football team in Alabama that's a powerhouse and they're so good and they have one of the probably best coach of all time, and you take a team like the golf team, how do you get incrementally better when those entities are operating at such a high level to begin with?
You know, it's funny, right? The very first time I went out on the PGA Tour, I get a call from a coach I'd worked with a tour player or two here and there, but nothing at this level. And I get a call, and first client of mine was, I get a call, and it was Graham McDowell. And coach called and said, hey, look, he likes what you have to offer. He's done some research on you, and can you meet? And so it was the Atlanta Athletic Club, and there was a PGA. And so I go over there, and on Monday we did a practice round. On Wednesday we did another practice round. And the Wednesday practice round was a young kid by the name of Rory McIlroy. And so I'm walking down the fairway, and in front of me is Graham and Rory McIlroy, and they were the back-to-back U.S. Open champs. And I texted my wife and I said, what the hell am I supposed to do here? I'm so far out of my element. Like, these guys know more about golf. I'm a baseball player. I play golf. I'm a good golfer, but I'm fascinated by it. But okay, what can I teach them? And she said, give them everything you got, because that's why they're asking. They're asking for you to give them your best. They're not, Graham's not asking you to be a golfer. He's asking for you to help him. And Graham and I have been together for a very long time and been together ever since, and become close friends and all the facets. And I think that ultimately is what it comes down to. Listen, if I'm working with a gymnast, Alabama's got an elite gymnastics program. If I'm working with a gymnast, I don't need to know what it's like to do a round off back handspring, but I do know what it needs to be to know who the person is, to know what the positives, the negatives, the challenges that they're experiencing, and be able to get them to communicate what they need. And then help solve those problems. And a lot of times, I like to consider myself a guide. So when you look at the incremental differences, the number one problem that I see with athletes across any level, it doesn't matter what they do, is that everybody has fears and doubts. Okay. Everybody has concerns. Everybody has, the what if, and it's dealing with those doubts and building that self-belief. Even as good as they are, even as great as they have been, they still have to drive through the cloud of doubt. And the more that they push, can I do it again? Will I continue to succeed? And so on. I think it's each and every one of those facets is helping them find how to push forward. And, we want to romanticize the great athletes of being superhuman at times, but they're as human as we are. They have the same fears and doubts and insecurities, but it's many times the best are willing to face them better than anybody else. They're willing to be vulnerable. They're perfectionists just like we are, and they're able to do the things that matter. I think when we see people compete, we want to just highlight how phenomenal they are. But what we forget is that they struggle just like we do. They deal with stress just like we do. But the difference is that they've just learned how to walk through it with a little better expertise than we are.
Do you think that's the biggest misconception or misperception of touring pros to the general public, is that the public views them as, and they are people who can do things that the average Joe can't do, the average golfer, that they can hit it, they can air carry at 310, or they can hit laser like irons, but they are human beings and suffer the same flaws and challenges that anyone else in society does.
Yeah, I tweeted during the Honda Classic. I like watching the Honda for a reason, is because the golf course really messes with the guys. And it doesn't mean that they're not phenomenal. Listen, you put an amateur down there during that tournament, they're going to shoot 110. Okay, you got crosswinds, you got very challenging experiences. So during this Saturday broadcast, I tweeted that, hey guys, listen, everybody needs to watch this. You're watching players. Gary Woodland fatted a wedge from the middle of the fairway on 9. It went 70% of the way there. Mm-hmm. You saw guys that were missing greens with chip shots. The golf course wasn't it wasn't gimmick. It was just hard, and people struggled. And I think we forget that a tour player wins 80% of their money in 5 events a year. Okay. So they're going to play 25 events in the year. In 5 of those events, they're going to win 80% of their income. I try to get my players to get better and make more money in the 80% that they're not great. Okay. And realize that when they're really, really good, they're really, really good. But when they're not, they're, it's not thinking that the valleys of their performance is predictive of all the problems they're going to have in their life and all the things that their game is going away from them. But golfers are unique. They go out and they romanticize in their mind what a great round is going to be before they play it. They sit there and they think about it, deep down, it's like, I'm going to play pretty good today. Like, I know I'm going to play good. Every other sport and every other athlete knows that it's not going to be their best day. Instead, that it's going to be hard and it's going to be a challenge, and they're going to be resourceful and they're going to have to find it. And when they do that, golfers build up this expectations and then they get frustrated. So, we see players that are playing great on the weekends of a tournament, let's say Bay Hill or something like that, and we're only seeing the players that are playing good, because as soon as a player starts struggling, the TV coverage stops showing them.
Mm-hmm.
They could be in the final group. They won't show them. I wish they'd show them all, but they won't. And there's only so much time to broadcast, and you got to make sure you broadcast enough of the Spieths, the Jordan Thomases, the Rory McIlroys, the Tiger Woods, because that's what the fans want to see. And I'm not saying that as a complaint. I'm saying that's reality. People want to see them. They want to see people that they follow. And there's a lot of people who are interested in or involved in the game because they're interested in those individuals. So, I think when we're looking at the game and we're watching it in a perspective, we have to realize that we're only seeing people's best in that moment, and we're only being selectively shown the best. Our game can't reflect that. Our game is more about variance. It's more about struggle. And it's more about dealing with it than anything else.
Yeah. In working with students, I'll tell them, and you should see the look on their face when I say, look, the people you see on TV, to your point, are the ones leading, and they're playing the best every week. But I said, if you ever go to a tournament, and like here in Hilton Head, we have the RBC Heritage. Mm-hmm. I said, go watch the guys who just barely made the cut, or that are playing in some of the first groups out on Saturday, because they don't have their A game. It was good enough to make the cut, or they came up with something to get them through. Now they may turn it on the weekend, but I say you're going to see guys who aren't hitting it inside of 10 feet on 11 to 12 hole, or 11 to 18 holes. I said, go watch them, and you'll see the superhero without the cape.
Yep.
And it completely changed their perspective, because like you said, all they see is the people who are outside of the marquee names. They see the people who are playing the best week in and week out, and they automatically relate that to that's what golf is.
Well, the problem with golf is the ultimate thing is when it's good, it is just magical. I mean, listen, they've written books on it, right? The Golf in the Kingdom and all the other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody writes about golf as if it's this. I think Arnold Palmer's quote, I can't remember what it was, but it essentially talks about how the game is maddening and invigorating at the same time. And that's the truth. We assume that we have total control over our outcome because we're putting on this action to it, but we really don't. What we really have is a challenge. We have a golf course that is the equivalent of an obstacle course, and we go into it with the right ideas, but we have no idea how we're going to do it. And we don't know what the outcomes, we don't know what the obstacles are going to be, and they're going to slap us across the face at some point. When they do, how do we respond? And I think as coaches, we have to train people to be prepared for that resiliency. Like I think about we have to train people in golf how to have trouble shots and how to curve it, not try to zero it out all the time. We got to train people on how to deal with struggle and how to choke down and hit a shot and be creative versus, listen, if we can get this one little mechanical thing fixed. I mean, I can remember working with this young lady who came and saw me, and she spent the day with me, and she was talking about how she and her coaches spent so much time trying to work on her driver, but yet she could get near the green in two, but she would 4-putt or 5-putt with a flub chip in there too. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I mean, I'm not knocking the instructor, but what are we looking at here? Mm-hmm. She's got a slice. Okay, so what? But where she's playing, it's good enough. But writing down an 8 or a 9 is coming from things that she's got to learn to play the game better, not hit it better. And yes, I know it feels good when you flush one, but it also feels good to make a 4. And ultimately, we have to look at what are we trying to do to get the ball in the hole. We want to put a factor on there where we, where we've got style points, but style doesn't matter in golf. Function does. And I think we get so caught up in style because the pros are so amazing at it. I mean, it's no different than it's the equivalent of being the Instagram world. Everybody is gorgeous and everybody drives fast cars and everybody lives in mansions and nobody works, right? That's the ideal.
The Dan Bilzerian lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know who those people are. And, the golf, we see a golfer who never struggles, but yet I could sit there and tell you how many of you want to know because I see them and I work with them and I'm a part of their lives. And I think we have to be really, really good at focusing on the things that make us better. It's like, look, get the ball down the fairway. If we were to break down the game into 3 important areas, to me, it'd be get a ball you can hit off the tee that'll get in play. It's hard to play the game from the trees. I don't care how hard you hit it. And as a junior player or a mini tour player, I don't care how fast you hit it. If you can't hit the ball in play, it doesn't matter. And I don't mean, well, I only do it once or twice a round. Well, once or twice a round is going to cost you 5 shots.
Mm-hmm.
So come on, we got to be better than that. And then, you got to hit the easy chips. You got to get the ball up and down in front of the green. You got to. If you can't get the ball up and down, then you're going to struggle. And then you got to be able to make short putts. There's no skill of putting. Can you just get a ball started on line? That's what it is. And, I think if you continue to do those little things, it's kind of like, okay, is the game that hard, or do we just make it that way? And I think we make it that way.
In the coaching side, technology's come obviously a long way, as it has in anything in life that we have today. I mean, here we are doing a podcast and recording it through things that can fit in your palm. But as far as the coaching side, there was a video for a long time, and now we have TrackMan, Flight Scope, and Force Plates, and all these things that show us as coaches the micro movements or the finite measurement, and gives us feedback. In psychology, what is your measuring device?
Well,
I always thought that's not something that makes a great psychologist to help somebody, is how are they able to extract that information and utilize it? So
you're correct. Ultimate Psychologist came out. We started as psychometricians. Okay, we were the assessment people for the mental health community. Over time, that evolved, and so I will tell you, I am not a formalized assessment guy. As a clinical psychologist, I was trained differently. I was trained in medical settings. I was trained in rehabilitative settings where formalized assessments, we just didn't have time to do it. I was trained in ICUs. The overlap there in sports is not what people understand initially on the surface, but there's a very deep overlap with sports. I'm really good on roadside assessments and quick assessments because I have to be. Okay. I had to be for a long time. So I just got to a spot where we didn't use a lot of assessments. That being said, that's the number one failure of our industry, is that we don't have really good, valid, and reliable assessment measures that work. But in order for them to work, they need to be validated in a sample in the area that you're working. All right. And I'm not certain that studying tour players is a great example for studying college players and studying amateur players. I do think that there's a new wave coming in the neurobiology of human performance. So I think we're just hitting the tip of it. My ultimate assessment is the person in front of me, and I kind of follow what I call a biopsychosocial approach, is that I'm going to work across 13 or 14 different indicators. What are their genetics? How have they managed troubles in the past? How are their psychological makeup? What are they looking at? What do they believe in themselves? What are their doubts? What are their fears? And so on. Then I'm going to look at how they socially interact. Can they take feedback? Can they take, things like that? Okay, so I'm going to work on those different factors. I'm also going to look at the mental game across 4 different perspectives. The psychological makeup, as we talked about. I want to know what the people think, they believe, how they handle adversity, what's their resiliency measures, and so on. I want to look across their training. How do they train? Do they train with a purpose to fix problems, or are they trained to get better? How do they execute under pressure? And then how do they gain wisdom? So, when I'm communicating with somebody, I'm not using a scale, because I haven't found, I'm sure we'll get some feedback on this, but I haven't found any personalized scales. I know people have them. They're like, the judgment index, or the DISC. I find them to be a little horoscopy. You throw a lot of things against the door and you go, see, that was the reason it validated it. Not really. To me, it's like, I want to get to it. And I think observation and interest are the 2 greatest assessment skills that a coach can have. Be willing to listen. And when a player's struggling or a player's giving you conflict or resistance, listen to why. Don't respond immediately. They're telling you why. They're telling you what's up. They're telling you what's going on in their life. They're telling you why they struggle. And we've got to be better there. And I think when we understand that and can separate ourselves from trying to fix it on the moment, it's like, hey, listen, I really like to, understand why you're struggling here. Or, I'm watching those different factors, right? What makes it work that way? When you listen to people They'll tell you because they'll keep coming back to it, and they'll keep pushing, and they'll keep, putting more information out there. And instead of us as coaches reacting to every little thing that pops our way, instead taking a step back and saying, why are they responding like this? Okay. I think when you can do that, now you're starting to build a really powerful, really, really powerful mechanism in place to help somebody because you care.
It is I know along those lines you had not too long ago a couple posts on journaling in your golf game and in life in general, and I thought that was very good because I still have and it's been years since I played professional golf, but I have every professional round that I ever played. I wrote a journal, and people think, well, I got to write. No, you just write. Just sit down that evening after your round and just whatever pops in your head, I used to write down. But doesn't it give someone like you the information that you might need and save some time, and that you can spot trends, or you can spot things that they're doing or what's going through their mind to help them get better faster?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, and real quick, let's go back to the player evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. I've got a system that I put together about a year and a half ago. It's called the player evaluation system, which takes coaches through through an online academy, kind of that basis of what I look for and what they need to look for. That's a different thing they look for. If you go to my website, it'll be there. You look on the online academy, it's there. Okay. So journaling. Yes. So one of the pet peeves I have, and I usually see it with junior players, or I see it with it can be my tour players. I mean, I had this conversation with a guy 2 days ago. He's like, I just don't know if I'm getting any bad, just whatever. And I said, well, when was the last time you journaled? Well, it's been a little while. I said, so are we reacting emotionally, or are we actually being logical about our development? Well, what do you mean? I said, well, you did some really good things this week. You had a couple bad holes. Why did those happen? Well, I don't know. I just hit some bad. No. And so what happens is, without journaling, you're not a recorder of your experiences. And so you're allowing emotion to take over. When you allow emotion to take over, you become the byproduct. You become a kite. Okay. And the kite is you're just, floating out there in the wind, letting the wind blow you where they need to blow you. Okay. That's not very effective. In fact, I personally like to have a little bit more control. And so when you look at the things that we do, if you're not journaling, then you're just completely allowing a byproduct to happen. And the journaling to me is not Dear Diary. It's a performance capture. Okay. And if not, then it's just emotional. And I did this yesterday. I had my players, every Sunday night I send out to my tour players and say, send me a detailed review. And one or two will say, can I just call you? And I'm like, nope. And the reason is that I don't want diarrhea of the mouth. I want them to take the time to write it, so they have to read it. If we're just going through it emotionally, what happens is, verbally, we're just processing the emotions, blah, 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 going through it, doing the little things, and we're not actually ever thinking. I want us to think about it. I want to look at it and say, you know what? Okay, I'm being too hard on myself. That wasn't a bad shot I hit on 8. It took a bad hop, okay? And I hit a really good putt to save par, and I couldn't do anything different. I mean, I would like to have a different outcome, but I wasn't terrible. But if we walk around and we allow emotion to be our guide, okay, well, 3 months later, if I'm in another struggle zone, what do I have to reflect on? Our memories are so skewed and they're so inaccurate. We anchor to a time that we think we are better than we actually were. And, I think it's just, I think it's so comical that we just need to be better.
Yeah. I talking to some of my closest friends, that you say we anchor to a time. All of us agree that about the time that we were 18, 19, 20 was a time that we all reflect on very fondly. I don't remember anything standing out, but, I thought that interesting that all of us across different ages would find that time was the one that we reflect on the most. I don't know if it's because it's a time that you're turning into an adult, but you're still maybe living at home, and you have the comfort of home, but you're the world is out there waiting for you, or what it is. But that's interesting that you say that we all have gravitate to that, because my friends and I'll do the same.
Oh yeah. Listen, we do it with past loves, right? We forget why we broke up with them, but we remember and romanticize all the great times we had with them, but we forget what ended the relationship. We go back to our high school reunions. We romanticize about how great high school was and how funny. It wasn't that funny. It wasn't that much fun. I mean,
no, everyone's saying, I can't wait to get out of here.
I thought it was miserable.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And the further we're away from it, the more we're like, oh, yeah. Oh, God, yes. It was fantastic. All right. Look, life's a series of goods and bads. All right. And it's not all or none, as I said earlier. And, when we played, people, a lot of times when people come in, they've got this moment in their past where they had this summer where it was fantastic, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was so good. It was so easy. Well, it was kind of like the opening of Grease, right? John Travolta meets Olivia Newton-John on the beaches in California, and it was this magical summer. Okay. Well, that's what we do. We romanticize about that time. But the reality was that wasn't magic. That was the result of either probably a lot of hard work that was starting to materialize. It was probably a freedom of thought where you weren't constricting yourself in a preventative mindset, and you were out there playing a lot, and you were playing for yourself. And then all of a sudden something got hard. Well, when we're on our peaks, we're not going to stay there long. And when we're in our valleys, we think we're going to be there forever. But the truth of the matter is, it's more that middle where we're at, where there is natural struggle, and there is natural frustration, and there's natural experience. It's what I call Suckville, right? It's this
that was your talk
space,
at the coach camp.
Yeah. It's that space between our reality and what we perceive it should be. All right. It's not our expectations. It's what we think our best is. And, that space between those is what I call Suckville, because we actually live there. We're never really ever reaching our potential. Never. And people who sell towards the potential are selling hope and lies. Okay. Because we're never going to hit it. No offense to the people listening to this. You'll never hit your potential. You'll never maximize who you are, because all you'll ever do is redefine what that destination is.
Yeah, is that because it continually evolves? So as you get better
Yes.
or stronger, then the mark, it's like trying to get a ball in the ocean that's floating. Every time you get closer, you swim to it, you push it away.
Yeah, the reason is that the human mind can't be content, and it can't look at something and say, I've made it and I'm successful and the world is going to be easy now. Because if you think about it from like a evolutionary standpoint, if we made it to the top of the mountain, there were 10 people waiting to push us off. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to refine the energy to climb the mountain again and take on the next person who's occupying the castle. Every great empire has fallen, because what happens is once you achieve the empire, what's the new objective? It's to grow it. Okay. They asked Bill Walsh when he won the Super Bowl with the San Francisco 49ers, man, this is great. Now you've won a Super Bowl. Isn't it going to be great? And he goes, no, now I'm coaching guys that have won Super Bowls. And they said, what do you mean? He said, well, every one of these guys has made the sacrifice to win a Super Bowl. Now they want to get their contract extended. Now they're at a different phase in their life. Maybe they're not as hungry. Motivation changes. So, our minds aren't built to be content. So as a result, we're constantly shifting it. You win one tournament, you want to win two. You win two, you want to win three. Well, now you want to win bigger ones. And then you want to win a major. Then you want to be on a team, or as a coach, you win district, you want to win state, you win state, you want to be a 2-time state winner. And now it's always something more. And that's just how the human brain works. We're never happy and content where we are.
Is that the mind and the brain working towards always needing to be growing?
Well, yeah, because if you're not growing, you're susceptible.
Right.
You're at risk. Okay. And so, the mind is always looking for something more. It has to have something more. It's just the human mind has two major purposes. Okay. The brain, to keep you alive, and then to push your genes into the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So procreation. So everything boils down to survival and, essentially sex. Okay. If we look at most of our drives, that's where they're from. Most of the time, our brain is misreading threats as high risk threats to keep us alive. Okay. And so a lot of the underlying processes, I don't want to miss a shot. Well, that's a threat-based initiative. It's not really a threat to our human experience, but it is a threat to our social status. It is a threat to our self-esteem, which, and so on. Status has a lot of value in the evolutionary sense for reproduction. Okay. Lions, the females want to mate with the lion on the rock, not the one in the swamp.
Right.
Okay. And because they want their progeny to have the highest chance of success. It's just what we are. So, if you look at most of our drives, that's where it's going to come down. But the problem is the joyous achievements don't last long. The painful ones last forever, because the brain is going to go back on the next hunt. The mind is going to go for the next hunt, for the next joy, but it can never forget a failure, because if it goes back and goes back to where it was at risk, it's essentially going to die. We don't eat food that we got food poisoning from for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We feel like we're dying. And it's just how we are. I mean, the painful experience of what we remember, we don't want to put ourselves back into it. Well, the problem with golf is we romanticize that joyous, but the truth is the pain is there all the time. And so we're reminded all the time of every bad shot we've ever hit in the moment. But we've got this anchor out there, this shooting star that is our greatness, that's a lure to us. And it's just not there.
Does that get so? I explain it to usually junior golfers, because as they go from being very good early on and have no idea why, they just know that they're good, whether they played a lot or they have natural ability for whatever reason. And then once we get into, okay, here's where you want to get to, and then they make that climb up that mountain, and I can see them as they approach reaching that peak, that or they have reached it, whether it's winning or making their first cut, whatever it is. And I can see the elation. And then there's this like almost big sigh of relief that they've gotten there after I give them some time to enjoy it. And I say, okay, here's the next one. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm here. I'm like, no, it's a bigger, the next one is bigger. And the way I explain it to them, and you tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, is look, if you're wallowing in that emotion, like you talked to earlier, that where if you don't have a journal, you're going on emotion, then you never go up that mountain, and your perspective is the same constantly. If you're progressing, even if you don't think you are, your view of everything changes, and subconsciously you're somewhere in your mind and your being that you are improving, that you're growing, that you're getting better, because your view has changed.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was on the right path.
You are on the right path. For me, Suckville has three phases. Okay. When you first start playing, you're all about the achievement phase. You enjoy it. It's very internally motivated. You're trying to solve the challenge in front of you. It's fun. You're beating the people. It's fun. It feels good, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, ooh, I'm gaining mastery of something. Oh yeah, I figured this out, man. That was fun. And then you move into the expectations phase, where all of a sudden those same activities now have meaning. You're getting something in return. There's a trade that's happening. Well, if I play better, then college coaches are going to pay attention. I mean, I want to go play in college. And so now all of a sudden there's expectations of what you need to play. So the internal motivation is not the same. Now you're looking for some external validation. And then the more misery you go in that, you move into Suckville, because it just breaks you down. That's what happens to us deep down. Okay. Is that we get away from why we do what we need, why we love what we do. Because it starts having, status associated with it. It starts having secondary benefit. It starts having gain. It starts having different factors. And so that's a natural progression that people go through, because it's natural, right? I mean, how long can we just sit there and fulfill our own internal desires? Nobody wants to go play by themselves at home and nobody knows they played well. I mean, especially in today's world with social media, we want everybody to know that we had a good meal or a bad meal. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to say, man, the joke on the golf teaching world, right, is I taught somebody today, but I didn't post a swing. So did I really do it? Exactly. When I first started out in this industry, I wanted everybody to know, passively who I worked with. I mean, I didn't want to post their names. I didn't want to post all that, but and now I just got to a spot where I'm like, I'll do it on occasion, but I just got to a spot like I'm doing it for the wrong reason. And so, I think we do that, right? I mean, why do we drive BMWs or Mercedes? I mean, I love them. I've got a BMW. My wife's got a Mercedes. Okay. Why do we drive them? Are they that much better? I mean, when I rent a Hyundai, I'm pretty damn impressed. Okay. I think it's pretty damn remarkable, okay, to drive those cars. But we drive them because there's a status associated with them. I had to laugh. I saw this great tweet by this guy who's kind of a faith-based comedian, and I thought it was dead on the money. He said, go to church and watch what happens if somebody drives up in a brand new X7 BMW. The judgment that people are going through there, right? Oh my God, they're so, pretentious to drive a car like that when there are people out there who are hungry, right? Drive up in a brand new Denali, and people are like, smart car. Yeah, that's a good car to drive for family. The Denali costs more than the BMW X7 does. Trust me, I know. I've been in the industry. I bought an X7 because it was cheaper than a Denali. So funny.
Is that just the way that the people's perceptions and views come out? It's
biases, man.
Yeah.
We all have biases. Okay. We're all judging people. We're all looking at ourselves. It's all a reflection of our biases, our fears, our insecurities. We only make comparisons to other people on what we insecure about ourselves. We don't care. You and I do two things really great. I'm not worried about it. I think it's great. It's awesome. More the better. But man, if you do something better than me in an area that I'm not real jammed about with myself, that's going to cause a problem, and I'm going to resonate on it because you're tickling my insecurity. You're tickling my doubt.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit about coaching in modern times, in the era that we live in. But I've listened to a couple of your shows that were very eye-opening. And one of them was about playing outside. Right? You played baseball. You played at a very high level, and I think we're about the same age. I'm 47.
Yeah, that's right.
And I absolutely loved as a kid playing in the yard. All the kids in the neighborhood, we get together, we play football, we play basketball, whatever. And to me, it really didn't matter who won. Maybe the goal would have been, yes, we want to win because we want to feel better, but it was just being outside, and you really didn't care if you weren't working on your inadequacies or what you weren't good at. You were just playing, and the lowest common denominator in whatever game it was got better. Does organized practice, as much as parents and kids want to do that now, does it allow for that development anymore today?
Well, if the organized practice is better, it does. But we're all part of the niche market, right? Mm-hmm. People come into my office and they expect to spend an hour with me, despite the fact that we can solve the problem in 10 minutes. Okay. Because they know a psychologist, you work for an hour. Right. They come to a golf lesson, they want an hour, unless you advertise it's a 30-minute lesson, but they really want 38 minutes. You go to your physician, though, your primary care physician, if he can prescribe the medicine for your sinus infection in 4 minutes, it's a win. So it's all about expectations. So, we're in a situation where, listen, outside play was great because it forced us to be creative and adaptive. But in organized practice, we tend to coach that out by going towards technical proficiency because we have the ability to do that. Being a catalyst, and the reason I keep coming back to that is we're launching a program in the spring here. It's the spring right now, but probably the end of spring, sometime in April, called Catalyst Live, which is 100% based on coaching coaches to be better catalysts. It's an interactive experience. It's a conversation. It's a weekly or a couple times a month webinar with me where we're going to talk about topics like body language, and we're going to talk about why those things matter, how to be a better catalyst. Well, one of them is, how do you organize practice? What do most coaches do? Oh, hey, Bob, good to see you. Okay, what are we working on today? They're not prepared when the people get there. They're winging it. And listen, I'm not judging. I'm being honest. We're not organized practice. We're not sitting there thinking. So then we get caught up in what? We get caught up in the drama of the person in front of us. And that drama is, what's the biggest pain that you feel right now that I need to know? We become an emergency room. We don't become a training center. But at the same time, I'm not sure if Bhrett, who's your local club player, really wants to go and train in different experiences. My time is limited. I want you to tell me why I'm slicing it. so that I can go play with my buddies, right?
Right.
And so ultimately it comes down to, what do you want? And so I think as a coach, we need to know, look, Bhrett doesn't really care about going in. He's going to go play with his friends. He's okay with that. He's okay with that. He just wants to fix it. So he wants the emergency room feel. I can give him that. Okay. But the Smith family wants their kids to get better. Well, then I need to develop experiences where they have to learn to develop the skills to persevere and push through in the ups and the downs and the resiliencies. And, they're more than likely, the parents are going to be stressed out about what their swing looks like. And I need to educate them so that they don't sit there and think that their swing is everything. I want to develop a player. We want a good jump shot, but we also want them to hit the jump shot with a hand in front of their face, and stuff like that. And so I think as a coach, we have to be really good about teaching that stuff and educating them. If you have group training, have the training printed out ahead of time. Don't just wing it. Okay. Know what you're doing when you get there. Have a plan in place. But players the same way. When you go show up for your coach, have a plan. And what I always ask coaches to do is to say, don't just say, hit some balls, let me see what's up. That'd be like walking into the ER and saying, let's get in the X-ray and the MRI. Let's see what's going on. Oh my God, do you realize that you have a arthritis in your right knee? And they're like, yeah, no idea. Well, what are you here for? Well, I've got an ear infection.
Right.
Okay. You got to ask them, what do you want to get better at? One of my good buddies, Mark Blackburn, who's a top instructor, I have a very strong grip. I have a very strong grip because as a baseball player, that's not unlike me. I want to feel it in my fingers. And I feel like if it's out away from the palm of my hand, I can't feel it. I know it sounds weird. So when he works with me, he's like, I'm not going to change your grip. He said, you got tremendous hand-eye coordination. You've played baseball your entire life. You can get a ball on a bat in a second. Okay. He said, but what I want to do is know what's the risks that we have so that we can get in a position so the risk is eliminated. He said, you're not going to spend the time to do a grip change. Would I like to? Yeah, it'd be fun to put you through a grip change. But we're such good friends that he's like, I don't want to deal with the phone calls I'm going to get when you can't hit it anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And, I remember I went to an instructor one time, a long time ago, was top 100 instructor when I first kind of in that experience. And the guy was like, look, your right arm is flailing and we got to fix that. Your right elbow. Well, he never asked me like why I do that. My hand in space. I'm pretty good at knowing where my hands are. That's a baseball thing. That's a pitcher's thing. I know where that is. Okay. And a pitcher, we don't spend a lot of time, at least my pitching coaches, on those factors. We worked on more core based stuff. So I didn't really worry about that. When he started having me hit shots with towels under my right arm, I went from hitting my wedge 150 yards to barely getting a 6-iron to the green from 150 yards. And he was like, well, you just can't do it. And I was like, man, you're not much
fun. Great response.
Yeah. I mean, I thought, it's like, well, I do have some shoulder history. I do have some elbow histories. I'm like, whatever. And finally I went to somebody who was a TPI based guy and he's like, you don't have any problem with your shoulders or whatever. I mean, the fact is that your elbow tends to flail when you take the club too far back. Okay. So if we can shorten your backswing a little bit, you'll never have that problem. And all of a sudden I started hitting shots further. And I'm like, man, that was a coach that couldn't coach a player, but could coach a system.
Mm-hmm.
We got to coach players. We got to coach people. And I think when we do that, we become so effective at understanding what humans want. Like, if I'm going to order chicken fingers, I want them dashed in buffalo sauce with a side of blue cheese. I don't want honey mustard. So if I'm ordering, if I go to our club and order chicken fingers, they say, how do you want them? That's knowing your people, right?
Right. You had an episode on the 21st century athlete, and I thought it was very, very interesting. And I find this overall interesting that in today's tech-driven world, some of the simplest things are often overlooked. And one of the things you touched on was how kids today, they're competing against the entire internet where, when we were younger, it was just whoever's in your neighborhood.
Yep.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, we have so much more access to knowing who everybody is. I mean, when I was playing baseball coming up out of high school, I think there was a kid that was on the cover of Baseball America by the name of Todd Van Poppel. We knew he was going to be the number one pick in the draft if he would have signed, but he ended up not signing, and then he was drafted later and blah, blah, blah. Okay. But the Braves passed on him. The Braves ended up drafting a kid by the name of Chipper Jones. But we knew those kids, but I didn't know who the 5th round picks were going to be. Right. But now, man, we know who everybody is. All I got to do is go on Instagram, Twitter. We've got more ranking systems for ranking systems. You know, Joe Lunardi comes out and ranks the who's in and who's out starting in January. Nobody ever questions their validity of them, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody ever questions who's going to make it on the PGA Tour by their AJGA ranking system. Okay. Nobody ever goes back and validates that. I mean, we know we had the class of 2000, whatever, with Justin Thomas, Jordan Spieth, and Xander Schauffele and those guys, right? But there were misses in that group too. Okay. They weren't 100%. And so, you know, we know what everybody does across the world. We know that, you know, this player does this or that, but all we're ever seeing are the positive highlights. We're never seeing the truth. We're not seeing the work that's done in the darkness. We're not seeing the warts. We're just seeing what we present ourselves. You know, like I said, you know, if you go on Instagram and you Google a hotel or you go on your search button, very common, Instagram is funneling you into the most common clicks, which tend to be people posing and sitting out there, but they've taken 5,000 pictures to find that one good one. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, we were laughing. We were at Mayakoba. We were sitting on the beach at Riviera Maya in Mexico. My wife kept laughing, and we have 2 daughters, 22 and 18. And, you know, we look down there and there's these 2 girls down there. And they are sitting there and they must have taken, I don't know, 5 hours of pictures. And every little pose and every little experience in the arch in the back and the hair had to be perfect, whatever. And I'm sure it was all for 1 or 2 pictures.
Do you think we're getting into the narcissism as a society with that stuff, or at least the younger generation coming up? That's something they're going to have to deal with.
Well, you know, I think, are we getting there? I think we're probably there. I mean, narcissism is a maladaptive coping mechanism where it's really a sign of a lot of insecurity. And so narcissists ultimately jab, and they don't have a knockout punch. So they jab to keep you on your toes, to keep them away from their insecurities. They're very, you know, they build up worlds of Walter Mitty of believing that they're the best of everything. Okay. The fact is that most of them are starving for self-esteem. And so that's their coping mechanism of it. That being said, yes. I mean, I think, you know, when we used to laugh about it in baseball, we'd come in and ask a pitcher, like, well, you know, what's your velocity? Oh, I throw 90. Like, everybody throws 90. Mm-hmm. Okay. You know, what's your swing speed? 121. How hard do you hit it? 305. Every time? Yeah, every time. I'm like, okay. So watching on the PGA Tour this past week, you know, I watched people hit drivers and they were going 265. So, you know, yes, and great day, but, you know, maybe you do hit it that far. Okay. But can you get the ball in play? Can it go where you're asking it to go? I mean, Cameron Champ, yes, is a new generation. And I do think swing speeds are going to continue to rise because more and more better athletes and better coaching are getting into the industry. And we're seeing, you know, elite athletes in that position. But what we do is nobody ever says, you know, we say, well, what do you normally shoot in competition? Okay. Well, you know, they'll give me a score and then it's like add 4 to it. Right. Because nobody's going to say, you know, unless they're coming in here and down on their luck, most people aren't going to say, look, you know, am I good at what I do? Yeah, I'm pretty good. Okay. But I'm not the best. There are other people who are better than me, but I want to, you know, most people, we are projecting our own insecurity, but we want other people to believe that we're much better than we are. And that's just human nature, right? I mean, that's why we do the things that we do every day. But at the end of the day, the funny thing is, we just have to continue to work to get better, and improve ourselves because nobody really cares. I mean, you know, if you go sit at a junior golf tournament, and my daughters play junior golf, and you go sit at the scoring tent, right? And people come in and they say, well, you know, let's get the scorecards. It goes like this. All right. What'd you shoot today? 78. I mean, it could have been, I mean, mm-hmm. I got some bad, I mean, it could have been 84 too, dude. You know, you chipped one in for 5. Okay. You hit a tree that was going out of bounds and kicked it in the middle of the fairway. we're constantly like, well, I mean, it could have been. I mean, it just, and I hear it all the time too. And I don't mean this to be a jerk when I say this, but I've heard this. I mean, I had a chance to play in college, but I just, I'm like, okay, you don't need to tell me that. Like, I don't care, or, I hear that in golf. I mean, it's like, well, I mean, it's like, look, this game is hard, right? This game is hard. Like it doesn't matter. Go get it done.
Well, you see that on the other side too. You'll see, especially on the ladies tour or the men's tour, someone will shoot a 60 or 61, and I don't know if this is just golfers, the game, or human nature. Maybe you can shed light on it. They can shoot a course record, tournament record, or whatever it was, and they'll get interviewed. And, yeah, it was great, but I missed that one shot on this hole. I missed that 4-footer that could have 59. Why is that golfers do that to themselves?
Well,
I mean, they just shot their career round or tournament record.
Yeah, because we're always trying to improve. But I mean, I think if we go to the Ritz-Carlton, we stay a week in a Ritz-Carlton, you're going to start to see that there was issues. Yeah. Well, I mean, the sheets, it's like my pet peeve of really nice hotels. They don't use fitted sheets on the bed. Like, I don't understand why the correlation between super nice hotels and a flat sheet on the mattress that is going to come undone during the night. Like, but I can go to a Hampton Inn or I can go to a Courtyard by Marriott and pay a third of the price, and they're going to have fitted sheets on the bed. Like, I don't understand that. It's just one of those things that I just don't get. Like, I don't understand. But that's what happens, right? So we go there and we become aware of everything, and we start questioning. Well, it could have been better. Nobody's ever going to play their perfect round of golf, ever. So the mind automatically goes to start making it better. What could we have done better? Now, I do think that there is some effort and there is some value in that. So after every mission in the Air Force, right, they get together and they have after action reports. After every newscast or every show, they're going to have, postmortems where they're going to go back and they're going to review. After every, after surgery, they're going to blah, blah, blah. They're going to have, they're going to sit down, they're going to have a review. And the reason is that we want to never glorify the greatness. We never want to memorialize the awful. What we want to do is always see ourselves as getting better, better, and better. And so if that becomes the standard of excellence, if that becomes the way, it's like, okay, let's all sit down. It's nothing personal. Let's sit down and start talking about what we're doing. What could we have done better? What can we do better next time? When we, we're struggling, what could we have done? How do we, next time we're in that situation, what should we do? When you start looking at it like that, it's like, oh, okay, now I'm not making it personal that I succeeded, because no offense, if you have your best day ever, you didn't break through anything. You may have a period of time where you're really confident, but you didn't break through. You didn't solve the ultimate outcome. All you did was had a good day. And it was a day that statistically was going to happen at some point. Now, I don't mean that to be, pessimistic or fatalistic. The reality is if you play enough, you're going to have good days. Okay. But if you're out there trying to recapture those good days every time you go out there, you ain't got a chance.
Yeah.
It's kind of like this. You go out with your friends. You got no plans for a Friday night. You decide, hey, let's go to the local Mexican joint and have some margaritas and some chips and salsa and have some burritos, right? Next thing you know, two other couples walk in and somebody goes, hey, why don't we go back over to so-and-so? And then it ends up to like this just absolutely phenomenal fun night, right? Mm-hmm. You run into other people. And the end of the night comes and you're like, man, that was a blast. And then somebody a couple weeks later goes, let's try that again. And it bombs.
It never works.
It never works. Okay? That's what golf is.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. You plan for it and you work, you do everything you can, and you go out and, like you said earlier, you expect to play well and you play terrible. And then how many people who are not hitting it good go out there and they're not focused on their swing, they're not focused on hitting positions, but they come in and they shoot one of the best rounds they ever had. I mean, that happened. I see that happen quite often, more often than people would think. Yeah,
well, when you finally get rid of expectations and you just go out and take what's in front of you and play your best with it, it's amazing what happens. But when we go into it, we're trying to expect it to live up to some standard, and it just won't.
Along those lines, is it better to set a goal and then try to achieve it, or is it better to just do what's in front of you for a certain period of time, and then at the end you look back and say, okay, this is what I did good, this is what I need to get better at, and this is what I'm going to do to improve?
I don't think we can be without goals, right? I don't think we can say, hey, I'm just going to start climbing, but I don't know what mountain I want to climb.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't think that's appropriate. And I also don't think it's feasible. Okay. I mean, I think we all have to have an idea and say, hey, what do you want? Like, what are you willing to make a sacrifice for? All right. Once you understand that, then we focus on the process that we use to get there. We invest all of our energies and our materials and everything on getting better and knowing that we're moving in that direction. And we take judgments, but we can't get so caught up on the goal that it's all or nothing. We can't throw moonshots. What we have to do is to build, I call them Keystone Behaviors. If you know that your goal is to win a tournament, then let's identify the 3 things that we need to do in order to win tournaments. Well, first of all, we have to get ourselves in position to win more tournaments. Okay. In position is a statistic that we can look at to say, okay, are we within three or 4 shots of the lead going into the weekend? That means we're in position. That means we've got a gurgle in our stomach. Well, in order to do that more often, what do we need to do? Well, we obviously need to improve our scoring average. And then what do we need to do beyond that is in order to improve our scoring average, we have to have something else. Okay. So now we're keystoning our behaviors, which means if I can do number 1, then it's going to prepare me for number 2. If I do number 2, it's going to prepare. They're not sub goals. They're process based, but they're markers in the sand that show us that we're moving, because unless we just want to play the lottery, you're not going to build any wealth. So you've got to have a plan of how to build wealth. Well, how do we build wealth? Well, we got to increase our income. We got to decrease our expenses, and we got to have an active savings plan. Okay. There it is. Not that hard. Okay. But we don't want to do any of it anyways. So that's why, saying people, I want to have X amount of money in my retirement account without making any sacrifices, all you're going to do is beat yourself up because you feel like you're a victim.
Interesting. What are some, that would kind of answer the next question. What are some of the things that amateurs could do to see the biggest improvement in their game? And I think you just identify 3 things that they'd have to get with their coach with.
They are the first thing an amateur, I call it a professional amateur, somebody who's working another job that goes out and plays on a regular basis. I think you have to look at what you're capable of doing. And it doesn't mean that you're good or bad or indifferent. What it means is you're going to have natural variation in your game. Yeah, there are going to be other players that you play against who are really good, who don't have variation in their game. I mean, we all know those guys at the club who show up and they can shoot 74 like they're falling off of their car. Mm-hmm. Okay. But I think at the end of the day, we also have to look at what it is that makes us, growing and pushing and developing and going from there. And, I think we have to accept variation. I mean, if we look at the reality is that we're going to miss fairways. If we look at, success or failure, we're going to, realize that there are going to be days that the putts don't fall. But if I only play once or twice on a weekend, how can I expect them to fall every weekend?
Yeah, exactly. Expectations.
Yeah.
What is failure a good thing?
It's a reality thing. It's the wisdom that we gain out of it. I think we say we fear failure a lot. I don't think we fear failure. I think we fear the moment we realize we failed. Because once we fail, well, then we're more than likely going to start building something back out of it. That moment that we realize that we failed is the scariest part. It's kind of like getting on a trampoline, when somebody kind of propels you up and shoots you up a little higher. It's that moment where you feel like you've gone a little further than the top. Mm-hmm. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's the scariest place. Okay. And then when you start coming back down, you're going to land on it. Okay. But it's that like, oh my God, what's going on here? I think it's important that failure is seen as what it is it's an invitation to evaluate how you can do it better. And it's experience. The only way you have failure is by having experience. And so experience means you put yourself out there. A lot of people are so afraid to put themselves out there, so they never experience it. So you got to look at failure and say, okay, what's the wisdom I can gain there? We're going to fail with students. We're going to fail in competition. We're going to fail.
There was a 2-year grace period from when I bought the equipment to do this podcast and when I actually started it. And well, part of it was just complete fear of the unknown. I had no idea.
Sure.
I had no idea what I was doing. And the other part of it was, okay, I don't know anything about editing. I don't know anything about the equipment. That ended up being the bigger thing. I came to grips with, look, just throw it out there. If it does good, great. If it doesn't, at least I tried and I learned something.
Yeah.
What's the worst thing that could happen?
I did the same thing. I mean, I bought the podcast equipment, sat out for a while because I didn't know. I do it with writing. I mean, I've got several books that are on my computer. I'm writing Suckville. We're probably going to push back the launch of it until the summer just because it's not where I want it. Mm-hmm. It sucks. And so, I'm going to get to work on it and make it better. It doesn't really suck. It's just not what I want it to be. There are people in my genre who will write books with misspells in them, and what I just can't do that.
No, I cringe when I see that stuff.
Yeah, and to me, it's one of those things where this is an enduring document. Yes, the message is important, but there's other avenues for me to get it out. I want the book to have, information out there. It's not about failing, and it's not being a perfectionist. It's about having a standard, because and so I think the failure part is there, but it's also, there's got to be a certain standard to be good enough. In the book, I can control what's printed on that paper. I can't control what's done on a golf course. Mm-hmm. There is a difference there. And when I give a talk, I'm not as worried about the enduring legacy. In fact, I don't have notes, and my slides are usually pictures with one statement on it. The reason for that is I don't want to be – the worst thing you can do is put 4 bullet points on a slide for me because it'll slow me down and it'll get me lost. I like to flow and go. I did a corporate conference recently where I had to give the same talk 3 times in a row for an hour each time. It was a challenge. And at first I was like, they were like, we want everybody to get the same talk. I'm like, well, you should put everybody in the same room because I'm going to give 3 different talks with the same slide set. And I did. They were different because I was feeling a little bit what the audience was. I'd ask questions, I'd get them interactive, and I would adjust. Okay, I can't do that on a book because the book has to go a certain way. So I struggle. That's why I'm more comfortable giving talks. It's why I'm more comfortable. We talk in the office when I do videos. I'm more comfortable doing offhanded interactions than I am scripted things. I hate doing scripted things. We have to know who we are. Now, could I be better if I was scripted? Probably. The message could probably be better. But, the truth of the matter is I don't worry so much about screwing something up. And so I think we have to look at it. You probably were like, well, what if? That's why I made the comment earlier about the podcast. It's not so much who's listening to your podcast as it is that you're listening to your podcast. I think that's the biggest mistake that we make in podcasts, and it's something that's helped me. I don't really care how many people listen to my podcast. I mean, we look at the download rates, but my download rates haven't changed in 4 years. I don't even agree with them because I have so many people who tell me they listen to it and they know specifics that it doesn't look reflective in my numbers. If that makes any sense. Yeah,
it does completely because I'm in a similar fashion. I try to make structure when I do a video or prepare for a podcast, but I'd learned like preparing for a podcast, I'll just write down, I'll start about 5 days out and I'll write down any question I could think of that comes to mind for that person. Yeah. And then I try to put it in order, but my brain just doesn't work that way. I mean, I have some structure of questions that I think I want to answer or have answers to, but then once you get talking to somebody, it's like, it's just a conversation. Let it go where it's going to go. Yeah. And if even the videos, if I try to script it, like bullet point it, you try to remember what you're doing, and then you forget you're actually talking to the camera or somebody that's listening. It just never works for me.
And if you look at the videos that most people really respond to too, if you look in the genres of the entrepreneurship and stuff like that, what you'll see is, people are much more capable of following the Gary Vaynerchuk approach, which is, it's looking at the, kind of off the cuff, free flowing. There's validity to it and things like that, but it's just a little bit bigger than, it's just, I want to hear what's in somebody's heart.
Right. Now you mentioned your book, the one on Suckville. I think you mentioned that at the coach camp, but you have a couple others, and as we're time's winding down, can you just tell each, or talk just briefly on each one and let people know about it, and then obviously we'll have linked to everything in the description and summary.
Yeah, so the first book I wrote was called The Mindside Manifesto, which is how to get more competitive in your life. And it really comes down to what is it that you truly want. I think most of us are living a life we're not, we're letting life live us. We're not living life. And that's in our business. That's in our life. That's in everything. We're just going through tomorrow's going to be better. And if I can just catch my breath today, I can do it. Well, if you truly lock into what you want, we can really hit it. So don't be afraid to establish what it is that you want and going for it. Out of that came the game plan, which was I took one chapter and created a workbook out of it. Because one of the things that I do in books, and it's a mistake, but I'll put just about everything I know on that topic in a book. I never think like, oh, this could be 2 or 3 books. I think, oh, I want to put everything in a book, because coming from the scientific world, that's what you do. It's, volumes of material. And so we decided to take the one chapter about how self-image is everything and blow it up into a workbook. Suckville's coming. Suckville's going to be good. It's a good book. One of the other things that we're doing, especially with Catalyst Live, is what you're going to see hopefully over the course of the next 12 months is a lot of ebooks. A little quicker, 25 to 30 pages, content area. You can sit down and read it in an afternoon. Very, very low cost, like under $5 types of stuff, which are really good, valuable content. I like to write quickly. I like to write concepts and material that can make a difference in people's lives. And I want to do it in the moment. And so we're trying to develop more content like that. The Catalyst Live is going to allow me to leverage a lot of the work I've done with coaches over the years. I do a lot of coaching coaches. I really enjoy that. And I get to bring experience of working with gymnastics coaches, volleyball coaches, basketball coaches, youth coaches, organizational coaches, leadership leaders, and CEOs of companies, and bring it all into what we call catalysts, and take that material and say, it's not just for golf. It's going to be for anybody who's a coach, anybody like that. And it'll be, if I had to guess, it'll be probably under $20 a month. And you're going to get 3 to 4 webinars. You're going to get specialized podcasts with just coaches. It's going to be one of those things where you say, if I want to be a better coach, why am I not on Catalyst Live? Because the interaction is so incredible. We have a guy who is mentoring us, who is the impetus for this, who's done this in a different genre, in a different area. And he brought it to us after some feedback I got from some coaches. And this is something that this is what's pushing Suckville back, because this is going to take a little bit more of my time, but it's something that I'm super, super passionate about, because I feel like we have a little bit of a coaching crisis in this country right now, where coaches have lost control of parents. They've lost control with institutions. They feel like they're sometimes victims, and yet they're the most powerful indicators that we have. Most of us look back in our life and we remember a teacher or a coach that changed our life, and I want to get back to that.
If someone wanted to schedule you for a speaking engagement or work with them or their team, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, I've got 2 websites. You can go to BhrettMcCabe.com. It's BhrettMcCabe.com and send in a request, or themindside.com. Both are there. Both are active. Both have a lot of the same information. It's just, some people knew me through the Mindside. Some people knew me through Bhrett McCabe. It's so funny. I named the company the Mindside because I didn't want to be at my name. Because if I ever hired other people, I didn't want it to be about me. But we're kind of going back to the Bhrett McCabe now, because it's just, that's where most people know me. And right. So, somebody asked one day, is the Mindside, because at the time I was barely even featured on the Mindside website, and somebody emailed and said, did the Mindside fire Bhrett McCabe? And I was like, no, it's me, man. So we're kind of merging those two. So if you go to one of those 2 websites, but the Catalyst is huge. It allows me to bring the secrets, if come in and speak to an organization about working for Nick Saban, working for Skip Bertman, working with, coaching with the best golf coaches in the world, and working for Fortune 100 companies personally. What are those lessons that are so good? So it's going to be exciting.
And social media handles, where can they follow you?
Pretty much all across the board is at Dr. Bhrett McCabe, BhrettMcCabe. I don't do Snapchat, but Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. I love getting on Twitter rants. So,
yeah, I followed you since Coach Camp. I love the stuff you put out. It's helped me in the short time I've been reading on it and listening and so on. And don't forget to listen to your podcasts, everybody. Secrets to Winning. Yep,
Secrets to Winning. And if you go on our website, a lot of them we do in person, and you'll have the videos to go with them. Sometimes it helps that as well. So But it's a lot of fun.
I could talk to you for hours. I got to probably have a litany of questions I could continue to ask you, but I know you've got other things to do, and you got a lot of different directions, doing a lot of great things. But I got to have you back.
Appreciate that. You got it. Anytime.
All right.
Just let me know.
Thank you, Doc. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's PARADIGM. And I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say.